Welcome to Conversations from the Edge of Consciousness. I'm your host, Kristine Madera. For me, and possibly for you, the inner world of consciousness has always been much more real and way more fun than the so-called real material world. Growing up, I thought I was alone in this, but I'm not. There are a lot of us, and far too many have no one to talk to who shares this experience. I've been lucky to cultivate a community of friends who love to talk about the energies, ideas, and vibrations that are pushing the edges of our own consciousness, as well as our collective consciousness. In Conversations from the Edge, we share our conversations with you. Welcome to Conversations from the Edge. This is your host, Kristine Madera, and we are back today with Alex Boianghu. Alex is a dedicated and gifted therapist with over 30 years of study and practice. He uses an integrative approach to therapy, emphasizing psycho-spiritual growth grounded in somatic therapy's focus on the unity of body and mind. Alex is trained in EMDR, a technique used to help people process and resolve trauma. He's also a gifted couples therapist, assisting the partners to reach deep levels of awareness and compassion. With compassion and discernment, Alex guides and models how to positively harness the psychodynamic energies we all possess to rediscover our common and innate holistic nature. Welcome back, Alex. It's just very exciting to talk with you.
Oh, I had a blast last time. I can't wait for this one. Let's go.
All right. So just to recap a little bit, if this is the first time you're coming on, Alex and I are going on a journey together over several podcasts, and we're talking about the journey of wholeness. And so we are moving on in our second conversation today, talking about how our infinite immaterial selves express itself through the body. I wanted to just ask you first to begin to lay the groundwork for this conversation for us about how you view or experience this process of the immaterial expressing itself through the material.
First of all, I think we all have to step back and be very honest and admit that being conscious is a mystery. The awe of that in itself is just profound. You know, we walk around in our lives just completely oblivious to the magic, I call it, the magic and the mystery of incarnation. I mean, because if we really sit for a moment and be like, where was I? Who was I, before this? Where am I going? I mean, and, we all want to know where we came from, where we're going. And what's interesting is if we really track it, we came from the immaterial, the space of being, and then we became expressed as this congealed, localized expression called Alex. And again, since we're in the human realm and animal realm and plant and kingdom and so forth, so therefore in this world, this particular expression looks this way. That the unmanifest manifests this particular way, and it's like the analogy you and I were talking about before, which is you. In order to see the movie, you need the movie screen. In order to see a painting, you need the canvas, right? Mm-hmm. And as we need this computer, I can write beautiful code, but if I don't have the screen for it, I'm not going to be able to see the code. Mm-hmm. So it's often said, in the spiritual field that the divine unmanifest is wanting to enjoy, and we could easily call this God if we want. I mean, there's there's many names for this, and I don't want to get caught up in the names, right?
Right. Because this is not religion. This is
not
just
religion.
The larger conversation that religion tries to explain.
That's right. It's a much larger, which encompasses, by the way, the divine nature and expression of the unmanifest to the manifest. Mm-hmm. So simply put, we are the expression of the unmanifest, so that we can explore and really, somebody said to ask Rupert Spear and many other spiritualists, why are we here? It's, some people simply say to enjoy, to enjoy this experience, to partake and enjoy it. And that sounds very simplistic, but it's not the kind of joy of just go eat your ice cream. That's definitely a joy, but a kind of joy that remembers the mystery and the magic. That joy is the profound joy, the profound realization of who I really am. So back to your original question is we are the manifest of the unmanifest.
It's a really big concept to have it. But I do want to kind of bring it down into some experiential things. Like for me, I realized earlier in my life, like I was having these experiences of this part of me, the infinite aspect of me, and the sense that I got when it was really it was really embodying me and I was having the experiences of it, is that it was really in it for the experience, and it didn't really matter to this infinite beingness what the experience was. It was simply in it to to have the ride. It wasn't like it had this, we think about these terms of purpose, that that we've got something we have to do, we've got this thing we have to learn, or we have this work that we need to do, or we have an assignment from the divine that we need to fulfill, which is part of that separation we talked about in our last conversation. But for me, having some glimpses of this in my own experience, like it was that this aspect not wanted, there was nothing there, but it was enjoying the experience, whatever the experience happened to be. And if I had anxiety over the experience, then that was the experience. And if I was flowing with the experience, then that was the experience. And from my perspective, the flowing experience was different than the anxiety experience, but I didn't get the sense that from that larger perspective, it really mattered one way or the other.
Purpose, right?
Yeah.
Is often something that people chew on in the realm of separation.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's the purpose is like, what's my purpose? What's the irony is in the moments of beingness, the purpose is simply the creative expression of being.
Mm-hmm.
So it's when we lose being at home, do we say, oh, I'm in the woods and I'm going here and I'm lost and my purpose is to return back home. You know what I mean? It's funny, right?
Yeah.
So, so from the perspective of, the experience of oneness is there is no longer a striving. By the way,
Mm-hmm.
let me do that. That
Yeah.
you are relaxed of the need and want of the purpose.
Yeah,
You know,
completely. Yes, because when you're in it, there's no, it's not like it's purposelessness, like in
no.
that terms of like, oh, we don't have a purpose, or we're just like, that was kind of my existential crisis, is like in these moments of, I have no purpose. Why am I here?
What's interesting, by the way, if you pay attention to this, is
Mm-hmm.
that in our beingness,
Mm-hmm.
each one of us here is here to express that in their unique way. So
Yes.
in my life, this is my expression.
Mm-hmm.
For another person, it's going to look completely different, but they will know because it has a sense of flow and unity, and it could be in anything that it's kind of interesting. It's not in the doing. It's not like
No.
in what, and it's not in what the manifestation of the action is going to be. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
that when we feel this beingness, it's a creative force just arising, and it manifests in what we love to do, and who we love, how we love, who we're with, and what happens is we start to align our life,
Mm-hmm.
that the people in our life, the experiences, start to support, mirror, and match that energy. So our own resonance with being
Mm-hmm.
magnetizes life, creates life that way. When we're lost and we're separated, well, that energy then vibrates and does what? Coalesces and brings together those people that have similar kind of energies, and senses that have similar energies, you see?
Mm-hmm.
So we can't get away from our vibration.
No. And we tend to also think about this in terms of like this one life that we have, but from this part of us that's infinite, there is no time, there is no hurry. There's an invitation, like you were saying in our last podcast, that anytime that we're in that state of separation, it's always an invitation to come into more wholeness, more connection, more attunement with this experience, this oneness. But since there's no hurry, from the perspective of the infinite,
Mhm.
if you don't get there for 100,000 lifetimes, then okay, that's fine.
I will poke at that from a different
Okay,
angle.
good.
Let's look at let's look at the image of the hologram. I love holograms, and
Hmm.
I didn't know this until I started studying holograms. And there's a term called the holographic universe, right?
Hmm.
And so the idea in a hologram is the following. So let's say you have an image, a holographic image, right?
Hmm.
And you take a piece of that image off. Let's say you with your scissors, you cut it off. What my understanding is, and I could be wrong, and anybody can correct me, I don't really care, is that the in that small little image,
Hmm.
the entire image is in the whole in the small image.
Yes.
And if you just stay with that for one moment, that in itself is mind blowing.
Hmm.
What does that mean for our lives practically? It means that everything that is manifesting itself every moment is holographic. It means that all your thoughts, emotions, sensations, and experiences are arising out of the conditioning in every manifestation possible. Therefore, each manifestation is a doorway back to wholeness, which means every feeling, thought, sensation, projection
Hmm.
is an avenue and a doorway to experience my unmanifest divine true nature. You see, so what's beautiful is this: nothing in life then is separate
Hmm.
from wholeness. When the sun shines and it shines through the universe and the galaxy, right?
Hmm.
it it shines everywhere. It shines. There's no place that it doesn't shine. And then those sun rays get mixed in with clouds and magnetic fields, and it looks like it's being sort of say shifted and displaced and changed and so forth. That's still the manifestation of the original source. So we can look at each experience as a doorway back to wholeness. We live a holographic life. And my invitation and the people that I work with, and they start to learn to do this, is that how can they take all experiences and weave them back? And when they have that aha, then the fight at work with their coworker is no longer just an event that's outside the play of their life. It's like so
Hmm.
funny. Like we're on stage and we're having a theatrical life, right?
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden we think that what's happening on stage is sort of say separate from who I am. No, we are the director, the screenwriter, the all the casting parts, right? So
Yes.
you can't divide it up.
And yet, harkening back to our last conversation, that orientation of separateness, you naturally want to break it up to try to fix it. And so, going back to that last conversation, contrasting the experience of separation and the experience of wholeness is one of those ways that, you can see how, well, however you're interacting in the moment is that gateway back. We've got the nervous system, we've got all of these aspects of our physical, mental, emotional experience or gestalt or however you want to call it, through which this life force is expressing itself. If we have this life force, this infinite beingness is expressing itself through our bodies, our life, our experience, our fractal, our hologram, let's begin to look a little bit about how like the body is an operating system and the aspects of that operating system to understand how this works in a different way, because our experience of ourself, our identity experience of ourself is based in conditioning. Wholeness is
Right.
based in unconditioning, and yet the operating system in the body, as we tend to experience it now from this place of separation, is all really about reinforcing the conditioning. So, how can we understand then this operating system that we are expressing as a body and
Sure.
how it streams through or interacts with the life force?
Let's go back to that girl in the first analogy
Okay.
of I'll set up the scene again so for people who didn't hear the first one. So the girl is the little girl, she's bringing some water to the table as the family's cooking, and she drops it and the father is like, you're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, remember what we said, she's going to experience that in the body first.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be a contraction, and that contraction later on, we unfortunately also in psychotherapy we're like, oh, we need to get rid of the contraction.
Mm-hmm.
No, no. And here comes the answer to your question, is that all the manifestations in the body in the
Hmm.
form of seeming contractions, right, are doorways of where we are split off.
Yes.
Therefore, let's say in that girl that moment, and she experienced it in the heart chakra and the throat chakra, let's say, as energetic contractions, her
Hmm.
shoulders, let's say, slump, and her body takes some kind of concave form, and she carries that through her life. The issue there is not like, oh, we need to correct her form.
Hmm.
What we are seeing is the manifestation, like a bonsai tree. That if I keep taking a bonsai tree and turning it to the left for 20 years, and then
Hmm.
I'm going to be like, well, it's turning left. Of course, it's turning left because
Hmm.
that's what happened. That's what I've been telling it to do, right?
Right.
And here, the body's energy, it's like like an ice cube. And what we want to do with that ice cube, the contraction, is we want to use it as a resource. We say, all right, let's go to that contraction. Let me give you some of the steps that I teach my clients. Number one, we look at the manifestation in the body as not something bad. Meaning, here comes the hard part for most people. The uncomfortable quality of depression, anxiety, and all of the other manifestations in the body, the sensations,
Hmm.
we don't like them. We want them to stop, right?
Hmm.
But the thing is this: when there's an alarm in your house that there's a fire, and you say, "I want the alarm system to go stop working." Okay, great. Well, let's stop working, and then your house burns down, right?
Hmm.
So the desire for the alarm system to stop is understandable. By the way, I get it because when we have those sensations that are overwhelming, our desire is to make that go away. You could understand why we develop all sorts of infinite addictions. That's really simple because addictions are management systems to the unconscious material showing up in the body. So, why do we use drugs and alcohol? Because we want to ease the suffering within the body
Hmm.
so then we can get relief from the unconscious material that's causing the body to stay in that form. You understand?
And it's just momentary relief because it always comes back.
It always comes back because we have to uproot where this is being held in the deepest subtle level. Now, let's talk about the subtle level here and gross level. In the Indian system, and it's actually not just their system, but it's a system of what we call the energetic bodies, the energetic experience. So, for example, when we experience our bodies, we often experience our bodies in a very dense way. It's like, the muscles and the bones and the solidity, right?
Hmm.
But if we're just quiet for a few minutes, we could also feel the energy running through the body. We can feel the energetic quality that's running through your hands, meaning
Hmm.
it's I don't think it's that difficult to experience, just experience the subtle energy, we call it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So we have what's called from dense, gross energy all the way to the unmanifest energy. It's the space of where it's the silence of the energy before it manifests in the material form, right? And
Yes.
in science, string theory was the closest, and quantum consciousness is the closest description to that expression, right? So what we in the West are over identified with I am my body
Hmm.
in its grossest, densest form.
And then also the aspect of identity from the
That
thoughts and the
perspective
ideas about who I am in the body,
in the body.
and how
That's right.
those run and reinforce themselves in the body. So
And
yeah, it's a
it's
whole
full circle, full
unit.
circle,
Yes.
full circle, all aiming at reducing suffering. I want your listeners to understand this is not,
Hmm.
I hope nobody gets, this is not complicated and all over the place. It's simply this. In this journey, we want to reduce suffering. That's
Hmm.
what we want in life. And we just have to, understand that there is temporary, reduction of suffering, and then there's the existential relief of suffering.
When we were talking a little bit about the codes or the operating system in the body, and one of the ways that we use that operating system of the body in ways that are ineffective for this, but they're very habitual and very part of what our society is that we use the thinking mind, which is part of the operating system, to try to fix the thinking mind. And we use the technology of all the different technologies that go into our perceived identity and conditioning to try to fix the conditioning, none of which actually address that deeper space of suffering or really brings us any kind of permanent relief. It just kind of winds us or continues to wind us up in this gross world.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question on this, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
And this is for your listeners, but I'm going to begin with you as the individual. I want you
Okay.
to ask, I'm going to ask you a question and I want you to explore this.
Okay.
Ask yourself, who am I without reference points?
Isn't that the thing that I've been exploring my whole life? You know, the one time I had an experience of that, well, not the one time, I experienced that as this space of spaciousness
That's right.
where there's no thought. You know, it's almost like I would imagine being in a sensory deprivation tank with a blank mind that wasn't actually thinking, you just simply are. And I've had that experience. I had a pretty severe concussion a couple of years ago, and I had it on the left side, the front left side of my head. And my whole thinking mind, I couldn't use it because it would hurt to think.
Right.
But you know the magic of this, because oftentimes we think, well, if I can't think, like I don't know who I am if I can't reference myself and my thoughts.
Oh, there we go.
And so
There we
what I was experiencing, and it wasn't the first time, but it was a continuous time for a few months that I couldn't think because it hurt to think. And so I was in this state of awareness where, you know, I could function. I had enough brain functioning that I could function in my daily life. I could cook, I could do some of the stuff. I couldn't do it with bright lights or anything, but I could function, but I couldn't do it from thought. There was no referencing within the functioning. And it
That's
was
right.
surprising to me how much it was a great experience. People they go, oh, concussion, but it was a great experience because it really showed me that I could fully function in a state of no thought.
All right. So you're opening
And
up a beautiful conversation.
okay,
Beautiful.
good. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. So watch what happens.
Mm-hmm.
In the book, No Self, No Problem,
Mm-hmm.
the book is about the difference between the left and right brain. So
Uh-huh.
since we're going to go into the brain for a moment, the left brain is dominated by self-referential
Mm-hmm.
mechanisms. It's simply the part of working with the world in naming things, dividing things for safety and moving
Mm-hmm.
through the world. We need that, right?
Yes.
So it's mechanical in a way. It's not whole picture, it's small parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a tendency also to fill in information. This is very interesting. It's
Yes.
not very accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is the studies showed that people will answer something according to their conditioning, and it has nothing to do with what they actually were shown, let's say, right?
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. And the brain keeps basically saying, I'm going to fill this in
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to help you deal, function, and survive, and so forth. And that's it. It's not about enjoying or truth,
Mm-hmm.
simply naming, dividing, and go on. All right. So
Yeah.
what we see, and your concussion mirrors what happens to that woman who had the stroke, right, on the left side of the
Yeah.
brain,
Yeah.
that wrote that wrote the book. If you remember the name of the book,
Yeah. My
a
stroke of
stroke of
insight.
a stroke of insight, right?
Yeah.
What happened to her? She had a left brain stroke,
Mm-hmm.
and she had the most profound experience, which you speak about, which
Mm-hmm.
was since there was no filling in,
Mm-hmm.
no reference points. It was
Yeah.
this experience of simply being
Mm-hmm.
free,
Yeah.
and experiencing life exactly as it is.
And it's a weird experience, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when you're used to the constant referencing. It was not the constant stimulation of thought and the constant, and I couldn't do too much stimulation from things like from external things, like too much listening or too much looking or TV or anything like that. Like I'll lose a lot of time sitting in a in a dark room, just like being. And it was an interesting kind of experience of getting used to that as like, wow, I can be in this experience. And what more part of me, like the left brain part, you know, wanted stimulation. It wanted an idea to think about. It wanted something to look. It wanted entertainment. But the other side, this part that was really, you know, coming online more because I couldn't use the thought process was just kind of in that state of constant wonder,
But
which is
what
a very different place.
so what does meditation practice, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
EMDR, the work that I'm doing with people, what does that have to do with this? It's exactly it. So what happens is
Yeah.
through breath work, you calm down the self-referencing.
Mm-hmm.
Through meditation, you calm down the self-referencing. Through EMDR, which releases the traumas, you stop self-referencing. You see, the goal then becomes, and the self-referencing is from the conditional. Then as the self-referencing relaxes, what you're left with is exactly what you've been looking for your entire life.
Mm-hmm. And then
You
you want
know,
to think about it.
uh,
I mean, that's that place. Like you have the experience of it, and then that other part of the mind is like, well,
I'd
wait a
like
minute, we got to
let's
figure
take
it
that
out.
further.
Okay.
Let's take that further. So it
Okay.
doesn't. So then we don't make thinking sort of say the enemy. So
No, it's not,
um,
but yeah.
it's not the enemy. So thinking from the conditional perspective is just
Uh-huh.
reinforcement. Thinking, and there's different sort of say, how do I say this? Ways of knowing. Let me put
Mm-hmm.
it that way. In Buddhism, there's a description of, I think it's 8 ways of knowing. Eight.
Mm-hmm.
The grossest way of knowing, the eighth one,
Mm-hmm.
is simply knowing from subject object duality and naming things.
Right.
The most subtle, like level one knowing,
Mm-hmm.
is in the non-referential space of knowing. And there's still a knowing, but it doesn't show up necessarily in the form of thoughts. There's still
Right.
knowing. There's still a
Yeah.
quality of knowing.
Yes.
So it's not thinking
Mm-hmm.
that is the issue. It's that as we learn to rest into the knowing quality,
Mm-hmm.
thinking can happen or not happen, and it doesn't disturb us from the knowing quality. You see, in the West,
Yes.
we are trying to wrestle away from thinking to get to wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
No, and this is a profound misunderstanding. And my teachers, my spiritual teachers, and
Mm-hmm.
the methods that we learned was you in the meditation and the breathing, you allow thinking to happen while you're resting in the quality of being. And then what happens is then thinking is infused with that energy and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't feel like it belongs to you. It doesn't
Right.
have a sticking quality. It's like a mirage moving. It's like a cloud moving through the sky. You know,
Right.
you perceive it. Let's say, right? But
And it doesn't pull you away from the
it
experience
doesn't.
of being in that state.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question about this then, because this is actually one that I had really wanted to ask you. Because in English, we have really interesting vocabulary issues when we talk about these kinds of levels of experience, because we've used vocabulary that's kind of in the exact opposite of this experience to try to explain the experience and to try to explain the opposite experience. Anyway, we'll go off on that. But when we talk about mind in the Western sense, we almost always talk about the quality of thinking. When you
Correct.
hear about mind from the experience of like divine mind, larger mind, like body intelligence, but this larger concept of what
Yes.
mind is, the thinking mind would be, possibly a part of, but not all of. What is the distinction between those two?
If you look in the East, mind doesn't just refer to thinking. So let's use an amazing text in
Okay.
the Advaita Vedanta tradition that describes the following three aspects of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I call them the three Ks: the known, the knower, and the knowing.
Okay.
Okay? Subject, object, non-dual knowing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with objects and what we consider the known. This will circle back to what you asked me, so you can see
Okay. Yeah, no
you'll see
worries.
you'll see the connection. I'm not trying to go off a tangent here.
That's
So
okay.
in our experience, emotions, thoughts, sensations, projections, and everything that arises on the screen,
Mm-hmm.
we take as the objects of experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those objects of experience, we do something with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
we start to associate that I am the objects of those experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then thinking, and I'm not crazy about the word thinking, to be honest with you.
Okay.
The better term is self-referencing, all right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So everything that we're doing is self-referencing. So if you eliminate the word, mind and thinking,
Mm-hmm.
what you get is self-referencing. So what are we doing? We're using the objects
Mm-hmm.
as a way to support the way we experience the subject.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. And if you could expound on that just a little bit
We're going to keep
more,
going.
would be,
We're
yeah.
going to keep going. We're going to keep going. So
Okay, good.
the subject is our perception of ourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that comes from everything we talked about in previous times of all the conditioning, all the material that's in the unconscious, all
Mm-hmm.
of that creates the sense of self, the felt sense of self,
Right.
and what's the felt sense of self before that negative self-perception is I feel like I'm separate from my home. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
And then what do? We start to, wrestle with the objects of our experience to try to relieve that separation. And let's go further then. Well, if we start to explore that sense of self, the knower, we realize that the knower, just like the known, the objects, is simply a self-referential belief system.
Mm-hmm.
It's not who I am. All right, we got to go take a step back. Now, then who am I? Simply the knowing quality, the knowing. And
Right.
the knowing doesn't have an identity. It doesn't, and here's the part that we all struggle with. It doesn't have any self-referencing. It is the knowing which can never be known. It can never be an object, and this is what drives us crazy. So when we talk about thinking,
Uh-huh.
thinking thinking is the attempt. This is why I'm coming back to this. Is
Okay.
the attempt to know knowing
Mm-hmm.
by making it an object. Do you get it?
Yes.
Do you
Oh,
understand?
yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, this is sort of like that the spiral that people who are striving in this, I mean, striving, and I mean this in a literal sense, in the spiritual realm, I mean, they just shift it from a
That's
different
right.
realm to the
That's
spiritual
right.
realm, and they go in circles with this,
And they
is
go in
trying to
circles.
know. Yeah.
They now use the spiritual, right,
Yeah.
to create a new self-referential spiritual self, right? I'm going to say something now that maybe summarizes everything. Okay,
Okay.
let me see if I can do this.
All right.
Our deep desire is to create a self that is lasting and forever.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can feel that. Like it's a constant, like we're kind of like making a sandcastle on the beach, hoping that it just stays. And another way of saying that is that we are constantly looking for a subject permanency.
Yeah, to make this unknown known and to know it as
And
the
to know it,
knower.
it's like freeze framing. It's like we want to take a picture and capture
Right.
the knowing quality and then put it on a frame and say, there I am. And
Right. Yeah.
then I can relax and I'm good to go. And it's amazing to actually understand. And I think that most spiritual teachers and teachings really, they don't do a great job of this subtle point. I'm being
Mm-hmm.
honest about that. And it's this point is subtle and takes some chewing on for most people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I hope all your listeners could just take a moment and be like, I am looking for subject constancy. That's what I'm searching for.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I'm using thinking as a self-referential process to capture an image of myself that I can
Uh-huh.
just relax with. You see?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So, folks, here's the news. That will never happen. You'll never capture a image of yourself. You can relax into the imageless being of who you are in the
Mm-hmm.
direct experience. That you can do.
Yeah. And that, I mean, isn't that a very simple way of this whole kind of game that we play with ourselves.
I'm summarizing the game. That's the game.
It is the game, and it's so simple, but I mean, it's so hard, but it's so simple because what it is that you want, like having that consistency is the knowing. I think that's what you called it. That is the quality of knowing that can't be known. And it's the game is that we try to know the quality
Yes.
of knowing
Yes.
if I'm getting all the vocabulary right. And that's kind of, I mean, it is a game. It's a frustrating game sometimes, but
It
it is a
is.
game, but everything we want is in that state, but we can't know that state as an object.
It's the most frustrating
Oh
part of
my
the
God.
journey,
Yes.
and the most liberating understanding
Mm-hmm.
when one settles into being, or the knowing quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then the relief of that, you just laugh and you just go like, oh, you just relax in life. Then it's like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, I, the quality of being,
Mm-hmm.
is always present, never changing,
Mm-hmm.
consistent, bright, full, complete, now, here, always, infinitely. It's like, and
Mm-hmm.
you just then relax, and by the way, you won't see it in image, but you will experience it completely.
Yes. And one of the things I wanted to say about this, because it really, it is that game that we play. And so often, in this self-referencing, we reference that me, the physical,
Hmm.
operating system, conceptual being, is
Hmm.
the one that's playing the game and has to win the game in order to, be okay, is what we talked about in our last conversation. But it's really the infinite playing the game with itself and
That's right.
experiencing that game
That's right.
through the
Through
body.
the
And
body. That's right.
I'll
That's
tell you, I had a knockout drag. I mean, on my side, a knockout drag out with my infinite being. Like when I finally realized that, I was I was irate for long, and I knew I was having a little temper tantrum. And then my infinite being was like, "Yeah, enjoy yourself. I'll still be here." But I had this knockout drag out when that finally like popped in. I was like, "This is so unfair. I can't believe it." Blah. And I was going through storming around, and my infinite being was just
I
like
love it.
cracking
I love
up.
it. I love it.
But
I love it.
but like
I mean,
once I
can
got
I?
it
So
out, I was
I
able to be like, "Oh, like this is just so cool."
I want to again, and please don't mind me. I'm very picky with certain things, right?
Absolutely. No, go ahead.
People will see that when they know me. Some people laugh at me about this, but
Hmm.
it's not that there's an infinite being separate from who I am,
Right.
and then experience called not
Yeah.
me. I want to be
Yes.
very careful. It's not that there's an object or identity called infinite being, right?
Hmm.
Then that
Yeah.
feels like me and not me, because
Hmm.
at the level of Buddhahood, which is the final stage, there is no more me, other, self,
Right.
divine. That duality actually collapses as well. The last stage is
Hmm.
the most hysterical one, is that the whole thing, that there's infinite being and non-infinite being,
Hmm.
even that collapses, Kristine.
Yeah. No, it is true. And I have, some of that experience oftentimes, but I mean, I experience both at the same time, like the being,
That's right.
the physical being within the larger being. And I
That's
can
it.
experience my like little temper tantrum self, not identifying with it,
That's right.
but I can express it and still be
Yeah.
laughing at myself at the same time in that
It's
expression.
and Rupert Spira, again, because he said beautifully. He said the sense of separation is happening within the infinite mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that though. So explain that just a little bit because it really helps to pull back, like you pan out, like one of those movie things where you pan out from like this little tiny thing happening and then you see this larger picture. And I think that could be really helpful for people. So can you pan out for us with that?
All right, try the following experiment. I want
Okay.
everybody one day to go outside and lay down on the ground and
Mm-hmm.
look up at the sky. And at first, I want you to look at the clouds and really narrow down your vision on
Mm-hmm.
each individual cloud. And notice that experience in your body, in your mind, in your emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I mean, I won't say too much, but you'll experience a limitation. Let me say that. It'll feel like a
Right.
contraction. Then I want you to open up your eyes and
Mm-hmm.
take in the whole sky.
Mm-hmm.
See see the entire sky as far as you can to its infinity,
Mm-hmm.
and relax into that. And while relaxing into that, notice the clouds, but do not lose,
Right.
contact with the infinite sky. That's the experiment. That answers your question, by the way. And that's how we start to realize that the clouds can only manifest within the infinite sky. If there was no infinite sky, there would be no clouds.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a little bit of a play on switching foreground background. And what do? And
Mm-hmm.
that happens with identity. It's like, we flip, we go from I am the subject to I am knowing. And then we realize, like, right, the sense of subject, in this case, self-referencing, is happening within the sphere of the openness. And then it's
Yeah.
no problem. And then we laugh, and it's just a passing phenomena,
Yes. Yeah. And you can, when you do this, I've done that same sort of thing. And you might notice if you're doing this as a listening, my listeners, that as you're in that larger and experience, even as you're kind of drifting from cloud to cloud within that larger experience, that self-referencing thought process quiets down. And it
completely.
can give you the experience, especially if you've got a very busy mind, of what it is to be in that state of awareness, that when the thinking mind, like that self-referencing monkey mind sort of thing, is quiet, that you're still there, you're still you, but you're not thinking about you or referencing you. And spending time in that, like I did with my concussion,
Oh
but
yeah. Oh
you
yeah.
can do that laying on the beach, you can do that
All day,
in
all day,
all day
all
long.
day.
And it will
Oh,
really help to cultivate that larger experience of you without being in that constant self-referencing of the identity. So
who
great
am I?
challenge.
Who am I without self-referencing? That's the
Yeah.
mantra. That's the mantra. If somebody wants something to hold on to, then
Yeah.
hold on to that as the question. And um, maybe next time we'll look at the impact of breathing and the eyes, how eyes and breathing, and that's why I did this exercise with the eyes. And if you're doing
Hmm.
that exercise with the eyes, with the clouds in the sky, and you do a little bit of mindful full body breathing, that even more so softens up the object and subject side of experience more.
Oh,
And
good.
you just simply start to experience that the clouds are and of course the the last realization is that the clouds in the sky are inseparable. I mean, that's a much later realization.
Yes, absolutely. That was a great little mantra to leave us on, and a little teaser for next time. And Alex has a really special gift for everybody. So, Alex, can you tell us about this beautiful meditation that you're sharing?
Yeah, this is quite lovely, this meditation practice. We often are seeking in our lives to experience wholeness. If we really look at our experience, we want wholeness through all of our experience. And wholeness is that quality of being that's already available to us. And our body naturally expresses that quality of being. That's what embodiment means. And what we're going to be working with in the body is the seven chakras, or the seven energy systems, energy points. And each one of them uniquely expresses a certain quality of being. And what we'll be doing is accessing each chakra, doing a little bit of breath work to clear away blockages and stagnations, and to experience those qualities then, and then to allow those qualities to settle deeply within the whole body, and then also to pervade our lives. That's the essence of what our meditation is going to be.
And I've done this meditation, and it is really luscious and lovely. So I invite everybody to check that out. And you can, again, check that out at conversationsfromtheedge.net or under the show notes. And Alex, you also have a course coming up in September that people might be really interested in if they want to dive deeper with this. So I will have information on that course in the show notes, so a link for people to find out more, and they can email you directly about that. But can you tell us a little bit about this course to let people know what they might be in for?
Sure, I'm really super excited. I've been meditating since I was a teenager, so it's been a long time, and I've been fortunate enough to be trained by some amazing Tibetan Buddhist teachers, and then some Western teachers and some Advaita Vedanta teachers from the Hindu system.
Mhm.
So in being trained and given permission also to teach meditation, I have learned throughout my life that people come to meditation with the best of intentions because they have this sense that meditation will help them make deep contact with who they really are.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, a lot of meditation is being taught, and there's a lot of misunderstanding in the West and how it's being taught. So I really have tried very hard this will be the third time that I'm teaching this course, to make meditation something that is accessible to everyone and to understand the most important thing. Meditation is not a technique, it's a way of being. So therefore, life is meditation. And we'll get into what that means in the course. But the course consists of 8 weeks. We'll meet once a week, 8 Thursdays. And what we're going to practice together, one is understanding the point of meditation, who we truly are, and then experiencing who we truly are through these methods, and then learning to integrate these methods through life, through moving through life. So the point of meditation is very practical. It's how to be, how to interact, how to go shopping, how to interact with loved ones, how to go to work, how to be with oneself. So this course is entitled Embodied Non-Duality. And the reason it's called that, embodied means that we begin with the body. The body keeps the score, the body also heals. It's through healing the internal energetic space that then thoughts, emotions, and sensations follow suit. We cannot change our experience through thoughts, emotions, sensations. They can only be changed by shifting the energetics in the body. And we can do that through meditation practice. We'll be learning what's called one-pointed meditation. We'll be learning what's called insight meditation, and we'll be learning what's called non-dual meditation. And those are the three that we'll be learning. And we'll be practicing them for an hour, hour and a half together each week. And so far, the reviews have been phenomenal. It's really changed people's lives. I'm really honored to be doing it, and I love what I see.
All right. So if that sounds interesting to you, check for the link in the show notes and also at conversationsfromtheedge.net under Alex. You can find that information as well. Is there anything else that you want to say before we wrap up? And I'll just say first that all of Alex's links and things will be on conversationsfromtheedge.net and in the show notes wherever you're listening to this. So go ahead and just wrap up for us.
Very, very important, so nobody ever thinks this. We're not looking to create a state. So none of this is a method to induce some kind of state.
Right. Yeah.
That by letting go, what's revealed is our true state. And what we're going from, and this was a beautiful theme in the book called The Science of Meditation by Daniel Goleman, that what they saw with practitioners of meditation is that they went from having a state experience during just meditation to a trait life, meaning that the experience of freedom that was happening just within the conditions of meditation practice became the ongoing experience of their life. Yes. So, and I want to be very clear about that, so nobody thinks that we're playing some kind of gimmicky game of creating an artificial in the lab state, because that easily can become something we want to grasp onto. Yeah. We become spiritual practitioners. No. It is the natural state. You can't say there's water and I'm going to try to create water out of ice and I'm really making no. The water went from being water to being ice to being whatever it is, mist and rain, and it never changed its form. Therefore, the state that we're talking about is the state of being, which becomes an ongoing trait. I'm sorry I took too long, but that's important.
That's perfect, especially if you're new to this, that habit of striving, of what is it that I'm supposed to be doing,
that's it.
Kicks in. So I'm glad you stated it that way.
Let go of striving. I'm going to say this very simply. No. Let go of striving. This path is letting go of striving.
Yeah, it's the deconstruction so that you are in your natural state.
That's it.
Yeah. I know it's so simple, it becomes complicated. But it is the journey of life. All right,
is.
Alex, I'm loving our journey to wholeness conversations, and
Thank
I'm
you.
looking forward to our next one. So if you like these, keep looking for these as they're, moving through the lineup. Thank you again for being here. I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all your questions, your energy. It's all beautiful, and I'm blessed and honored to do this. Thank you.
This is your host, Kristine Madera. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation from the edge of consciousness. You can find all our conversations at conversationsfromtheedge.net. You'll also find links to schedule a private conversation with me or any of my friends, as well as tools to help you expand your own consciousness and explore what's possible for you outside the boundaries of your current perceptions. Feel free to use this podcast to start your own conversation by sharing it with friends, on social media, in your blog, or even in your own podcast. And as always, live the adventure of pushing your own edge. It's the most amazing adventure there is.